So let's do the chanting. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami, sangham saranam gacchami, tadayambi buddham saranam gacchami, tadayambi dhammam saranam gacchami, tadayambi sangham saranam gacchami, tadayambi buddham saranam gacchami, tadayambi dhammam saranam gacchami, tadayambi sangham saranam gacchami. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the six paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the six paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the six paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May they be free from suffering and its causes. May they never be parted from the happiness beyond suffering. May they abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment to the near, and aversion from the far. I shall cause this. Great compassionate Buddha, please inspire me to be able to do so. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every types of offerings, actual and mentally transformed. I confess all of my negative actions, accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in all the virtues of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until cyclic existence ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for all sentient beings. I dedicate the virtues of myself and others to the great enlightenment. However innumerable all sentient beings are, I vow to save them all. However inexhaustible my delusions are, I vow to extinguish them all. However immeasurable the Dharma teachings are, I vow to master them all. However endless the Buddha's way is, I vow to follow it completely. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Tayata gati gati parasam gati buddhi soha. Tayata gati gati parasam gati buddhi soha. Tayata gati gati parasam gati buddhi soha. So now get yourself comfortable for some meditation practice. And we will release the tension in the body. So bring your mind inside your body. We'll start at the bottom of the body, work our way up to the top. And as we go, we release the tension, if we have any. So let's take a few moments in silence to do this. If you find it hard to release the tension, just with your mind, you can utilize your breathing. Take a deep in breath and long out breath and release the tension on the out breath. Or you can also manipulate the body, stretch it a little bit. And after you engage in this releasing of the tension in the body, of course, in your own time, you should do it for a little bit longer than we are able to do it in these short classes. Then you just check it again. Just check your body again in case you've missed any areas. This helps you as well bring your mind inside the body again. So once again, releasing the tension in the body helps us to focus the mind. And as we are focused mentally, this helps us to focus on releasing the tension. So body and mind, closely related, obviously. When you've done this, bring your mind initially to the tip of your nose. The object of the meditation is the feeling of the breath as you breathe in and breathe out. Breathing in your nose all the way into your lungs and then back out your nose again. Continuing this process and focusing on this feeling of the breath as you do so. You can also add the extra technique of counting the breaths to help you keep focused on the feeling of the breath. So one breath in and one out is 1 and so on up to 10. If you get distracted along the way, go back to 1 at that time. So if any thoughts arise or any other mental activities arise, don't cling to them. Don't grasp at them. But also don't try to force them away or try to deny them. But just simply and naturally let them go by replacing your mind back onto your breath. It's best that we catch the first thought, as we call it, before you start telling yourself stories and writing movie scripts and things. Writing a book with your mind from your past experiences and so on. But if you haven't caught it at the first thought, second or third or whatever, just catch it whenever you do. Don't worry. And replace your mind back onto your breath at that moment. And if you start to become dull mentally, then wake your mind up a little bit by refocusing on to your breath more brightly. So let's practice like this in silence for a little bit. So now we can feel pleased with ourselves for engaging in this short session of breath meditation to help enable ourselves to develop and improve our concentration, eventually to become one-pointed concentration. So now we'll switch techniques to the loving kindness meditation, or metta bhavana. I remind you that metta, we normally translate this as universal loving kindness. Sometimes you may see it just as kindness or love or friendliness. I like to use those three words, universal loving kindness. And it's one of the four immeasurables, or Brahma Vihara, the sublime states of mind. The others are Karuna, or universal compassion, Mudita, a universal joy, I like to call empathetic joy, and Upekkha, or equanimity. Of course, the first three must be based on the fourth, equanimity, so you have no bias. Otherwise, they can't be universal, can they? So let's work to develop these now by utilizing the loving kindness meditation, or universal loving kindness meditation. Fill yourself with so much loving kindness, utilizing the visualization technique of filling yourself with the white light. This universal loving kindness includes friendliness, harmlessness, non-violence, respect and gratitude and appreciation, and so on. Fill yourself with so much universal loving kindness now that it overflows and radiates outwards, radiating from your heart center and entering into the heart centers initially of your loved ones, family and friends in front of you, filling them with the white light. In other words, filling them with the universal loving kindness too. As we go through these processes, wish that all of these people or beings are free from suffering, have happiness, and are peaceful. Now also include those you may regard as strangers, and do likewise. And also those you may regard as enemies, and do likewise. This is why we have to develop this mind of equanimity. It should be very easy for us to send or radiate this loving kindness to our loved ones. Not so hard to indifference or people we have indifference towards, may regard as strangers. We just have to bring them to mind, but more difficult to those that we may regard as enemies. But this is all made up in our own mind. Habits that we've created, tendencies that we've created over time due to our past experiences. Now we're working to undo any bias. And now let's extend this loving kindness out beyond just human beings to all sentient beings now. We work our way distance-wise, starting initially around our immediate area, to all the sentient beings that live on the land and fly through the air, live in the waters, whether they're born from wombs, eggs, moisture, or through transformation. Extend this loving kindness by utilizing the visualization technique of this wide light leaving your heart center and filling all of these beings, entering into their heart centers and filling their whole being with this universal loving kindness, also including the wish that they are happy, free from suffering, and are peaceful. And now throughout your whole state or county, and all of the states and counties throughout your country, and all of the countries throughout the world, those that you're familiar with and have an affinity towards, those you're indifferent towards, as well as those you may have some negative feelings about. Also have your loving kindness pervade throughout all of the oceans, down to the core of the earth and the outermost atmosphere. And beyond this planet alone, throughout the whole solar system. And galaxy. And universe and beyond. Have your loving kindness pervade throughout infinite space, and at the same time be present here and now to recite the dedication prayer. Due to this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of the Buddha, so that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious body Chitta, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And may the precious view of Shunyata, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. So, obviously, we will continue our commentary on Master Atisha's heart advice. We've probably covered about 25 or so of them so far out of 47 lines, and we'll continue to do so until they are exhausted, and then I will give some sort of conclusions afterwards, and then move on to whatever it is we're going to study next. And we'll cover probably 4 of them today, though I will recap the last one from last week as well, as I've done in a couple of other weeks. And so, a couple of things before we start the commentary or continue the commentary is I mentioned, a while ago that I was going to share some things to do with meditation with you. Some of them, or most of them, will be from the ancient masters' experiences. I'm going to utilize, I'm not sure in what order yet or when, the book Zen Speaks, Shouts of Nothingness, which has a lot of, in cartoon form actually, has a lot of these teachings. I will actually teach from that book. It's sometime in the near future. Could be next subject, who knows? We'll see. So I'll maybe leave those ones for then, for when we do that. I thought I'd share an experience that I had myself. I'm not claiming to have any special realizations or any understanding of the deeper, of the truth, the ultimate truth. But I just share this experience with you very briefly because I could go on. Some of you know this. I don't think I've shared it on during their Zoom classes. Anyway, when I was at the temple in the USA, so around about 1999, 2000, 2001, something like that. Okay. I had finished teaching the Saturday classes. We had the 2 classes, really kind of 2.5 or 3 classes if you include the children, because we had the children and then the teenage class was also kind of half included beginners, introductory sort of class. And then we had more beginners to intermediate, then we had more intermediate onwards. Okay, so teaching the classes over the period, maybe about 4 hours in the afternoon altogether, and had dinner with my master and other people. And then afterwards, I can't remember, I think my master gave a teaching in there, and quite often I used to sit in there, even though he gave the teaching in Vietnamese. I understood some of it in those days, but not much. And then other times I would talk with my students or other people. I can't remember what I did straight after the dinner. But after most people left the temple, I sat outside. In fact, I think it was during the Dharma talk. I started doing this, but I went into the evening, okay, and, and just sitting there, meditating, looking uh, probably about 10 meters away from the wall. So I wasn't staring at the wall as Bodhidharma did in the cave, but I was just keeping my eyes open, meditating. And then after some time, I noted I was aware, I should say, of people leaving. And anyway, so there was this family of raccoons walking on the wall. Anyway, they stopped and they had a little look at me. I don't remember exactly how many, but there was, obviously a mother and father and some young ones, maybe two or three. They got down off the wall and they just sat there, just a few meters away from me. And I thought this was a really nice experience. And, you have to be careful because they do have sharp teeth and maybe things like rabies or whatever. But they were very peaceful. I was very peaceful, just sitting there by myself. Anyway, a lot of time went by and they moved on. And still more time went by. During this meditation, I felt, you could say metaphorically, one with the universe. Felt very at peace, but also not dull. It's not as if I fell asleep at all. And so it was very nice. Until late at night, around midnight or something, my master actually said to me, time to go to bed, basically. It's late. I didn't realize how much time had gone by. And at the end of this little session, before I walked back inside, I thought to myself, and I'm laughing at myself now, did I just perceive emptiness? And then I realized the fact that I had to ask myself, did I just perceive emptiness, meant that I didn't. So, because I still had doubts, and when you perceive emptiness, no doubts, right? So I just thought I'd share that for a little bit of humor with you, but also to encourage you. There are times when you are having a good meditation, not just a feel-good meditation, but really deep, peaceful, clear meditation. You're really focused on, it could be a question, like the how do, it could be a question. Um, what am I? Something like this. Koan, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Something like this. It could be anything that for us to deepen our understanding, or it could be just being in that moment. You could almost say no thought, but not really no thought. Okay, so then you should do it. If you have the time, the um, conditions where you can meditate longer, you should do it that time because you may have some sort of breakthrough, some sort of realization. So I encourage you to do that. Like I said, I'm not claiming anything. Okay. Anyway, the other thing too is one of you mentioned to me that you really want to study the entire Pali Canon. At the same time, you also want to study the entire Tengyur and Kangyur, the Tibetan words, basically meaning the scriptures, the collection of scriptures, Mahayana scriptures as well as the Theravada scriptures, and also commentaries, teachings by the masters along the way, which includes actually this one from Master Atisha. Then actually for you to study the entire um, canon, Tengu, Kangu, Mahayana canon, Theravada canon, would take you a very, very long time. You can read them, no problem. In fact, I think Pali Canon may be something you're probably familiar, some of you, with the size of the Christian Jewish Bible or Bibles. And Pali Canon apparently is almost 60 times. So 57 is the number I remember, times the size of that. Okay, so you possibly can read it, but to study it thoroughly, get commentaries on it, would take lifetimes, I imagine. But important to study what it is you're studying right now. This teaching, for instance, includes all of this, all of the canons. Okay, all of the Buddhist teachings encompass all of the other Buddhist teachings. Okay. Um, but if there's any specific thing that you want to study, then you should focus on that. And you can question me and question other teachers and so on. And utilize your ability to investigate and analyze yourself, certain parts, okay? Now, I know that you have been studying the Lam Rim, the stages of the path to enlightenment, by the Lama uh, Lama Tsongkhapa, who was the initial leader, the beginner of the Dalai Lama tradition, for instance. I won't go into any more detail than that. So that's included in the Tengyur and Kangyur, okay? And that includes all of the path as well. So yeah, for you to study all of these canons, a lot of reading, maybe not enough contemplation and not enough practice if you do that. So you need to look at a different aspects of the Dharma, whether it's one line, whether it's commentary on one line, whether it's one sutra, and so on, one tantra or something, then contemplate it, and then get some teachings on it, and then absorb your mind with the understanding that you get from that. So that's important, okay? Remember again, three wisdom tools: reading or hearing, contemplating, and then absorbing the mind. Very difficult, pretty much impossible for you to do that just by reading all of the entire scriptures, entire canons. Okay, even just, I'm not saying just because I'm belittling, but even just the Theravada canon, which is shorter than the other ones. Okay. What else can I say? I think that's all for that. We'll get on to Master Atisha's teachings now. We've only got maybe about another 11 minutes, but we've covered a lot just by giving the teachings I just gave them. Okay. So last week's one that I wanted to recap, it is, no, hang on. See all living beings as your father or mother and love them as if you were their child. Now, of course, the question came in, and this is the reason why I wanted to recap. But how can I be sure of previous lives? And I say the same thing as I just said then. You have to utilize the three wisdom tools to be able to realize this directly. But have a look at the opposites. What are the other possibilities? That what, just by chance you just came into being, and then by chance you've gone away with no consequences? Obviously impossible. That some sort of superior being created you, and if that's the case, then you have no control, no what is called free will or anything like that. Okay. So it's obvious that your existence right now has come from previous existence, from cause and effect, moment to moment to moment. And during these times, during these lifetimes, you have had parents. So it is likely, at very least likely, that all beings have been your parents. You cannot prove that wrong. Okay. So you could almost say like a leap of faith in the sense now. Just know that this moment came from a previous moment. This hour is conditioned by the previous hour, and go back, so forth, lifetime to lifetime. Okay. Um, and it's also, like I've said before, it's also a really good way for you to be kind to all living beings. Realize, or not, maybe not just realize, but think it's possible that all of these living beings have been my mother in a previous life, mother and father, or father. And then it's more likely that you're going to be kind to them, even if they bug you, even if they're behaving terribly. Okay, so we'll leave it at there. So I've addressed that question. Always keep a smiling face and a loving mind, and speak truthfully without malice. So this relates, and I actually kind of covered this with a little bit of instruction during the loving kindness meditation, and that's why I mentioned that. Okay, and so keep a smiling face, keep pleasant face. Don't go around with this frown and everything. You don't have to put on a smile all the time, but you can be pleasant. If somebody is walking past you in the street, pleasant look on your face. little smile, maybe, be happy with others like that, but also keeps yourself uh, kind of protecting your mind from being negative by thinking of that. And a loving mind, being friendly, kind mind. I like to say inner and outer smile in a sense, Keep an inner smile, even if outside you're not smiling at that moment. Keep a good attitude, basically. And if you're going to speak with others or even have thoughts with yourself, be truthful. Don't try to cover up the truth or especially lie to yourself or lie to others and so on. And also be friendly. Don't have bad intentions. Protect your mind by having good intentions. So that kind of covers that one. And like I said, I covered it. I knew it was coming up, so I wanted to cover a little bit during or just before the loving kindness meditation. Next one is if you talk too much with little meaning, you will make mistakes. Therefore, speak in moderation and only when necessary. You're probably aware or should be aware of my teaching about not to talk too much, because, basically as part of not doing too much, not worrying too much, and so on, okay? Not working too much. If we're talking all the time, then we don't get the opportunity to listen to the possible wisdom, possible wise words of others. We don't get the opportunity to calm our mind, to learn more and more, So often when we speak, we are just repeating what we already know. And so often human beings speak just to try to impress others or to cover up their faults. So if we're doing it like that, then we're going to fall off the path. We're going to make mistakes on the Dharma path. And we should try to avoid to do that, but doing that. It's actually quite simple compared to a lot of the other practices, a lot of the other, you could say, undoing of the knots of the mental afflictions. This practice should be quite simple if we apply ourselves, if we utilize the great effort and maintaining the wholesome state of mind and so on. Um, Speak in moderation. You don't have to, you can speak, obviously, but maybe listening is better a lot of the time. Even if you're listening to dribble or if you're listening to, nonsense, this helps you to realize what not to think, what um, not to be this way, yourself. And do it when it's necessary. We don't always have to say stuff. That'll do. Especially don't slander others. Obviously, the right speech. Don't speak meaninglessly. Don't just gossiping, and don't speak to sort of divide people or speak harshly and so on. Okay. Next one. If you engage in many meaningless activities, your virtuous activities will degenerate. Therefore, stop activities that are not spiritual. So work like all of the activities you engage in your lives, try to have them based on the Dharma practice, based on bringing benefit to yourself and to others, based on a bodhicitta intention, great compassionate intention. For if we engage in, the meaningless activities, the worldly activities that don't bring benefit, especially those that are harmful, then of course our goodness and our merits, our virtue will degenerate. It will diminish, it will decrease because we're engaging in meaningless stuff. So let's say, like, for instance, can't think of a better example right now, but say it's a container like this and it only has a certain amount that can fit in there. Then, if your container is full of virtue, then that's fantastic. But as soon as it has meaningless stuff in there, that takes up the room of the virtue, doesn't it? As soon as it has harmful, it destroys the virtue. So the more that your container, your mind, is virtuous, the less meaningless stuff is going to be in there and less harmful stuff. But vice versa too, okay? So that's sort of like a simple example. I think that'll do. So then stop activities that are not spiritual. It may be difficult to do this because we are habitual creatures, but do your best to do so. And the last one, which I will recap again next week, as I've been doing the last few weeks, is recapping the last teaching of the previous class. It is completely meaningless to put effort into activities that have no essence. So that pretty much is covered by the previous one, isn't it? I repeat, it is completely meaningless to put effort into activities that have no essence. In other words, they're not meaningful. And especially as a serious Dharma practitioner, your activities, whether it's watering the garden, playing sports even, or watching TV, or doing whatever, should be based on the bodhicitta intention, or at very least be harmless. And if they're not, then give that up, okay? If you're doing things that are harmful, stop. It should be simple for you to do so, even if you have to continue to remind yourself every few seconds even. But meaningless things too. Some people have said to me in the past about gossiping, oh, that's not so bad. It's not as bad as lying or slandering and so on. I'm just using speech now as an example because had that thought. And I say, actually, it's thinking about that way is not as bad as doing these negative things. But first of all, it can lead very easily to the negative speech, it included in the gossiping, or at very least, it's meaningless, right? So how can it lead to meaningful discussions? How can it lead to you sort of accumulating in your mind meaningful teachings, meaningful words, phrases, things like that? How can you become wiser um, if you're engaging only in meaningless chatter? Okay, so once again, I'll just say that one. It is completely meaningless to put effort into activities that have no essence. Okay, so I think we're just about to finish. I rejoice in your goodness as always, and I encourage you to study, practice, and share the Dharma to the best of your ability. I look forward to seeing you next week. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya.